Hello and welcome to part 21 of the Micky head tutorial set. This is David Ward. When last I left you, we had gone through and set up the phoneme for the pose library and created the U and F shape keys and added drivers to them. So now we're ready to actually get in here and actually start animating. Actually. So let me select all these. I'm going to get rid of those keyframes that we were playing with earlier. Go ahead and delete those. And before we can lip sync something, we have to have something to lip sync. Well, if I can get in here, Alt G, Alt R. Okay, trying to clear out all the poses and everything. But in order to actually lip sync something, we have to have something to lip sync to. We could just have him doing some weird facial shapes and expressions, and that'd be nice. But it's even nicer if he's actually saying something, or it looks like he's saying something. So there's another software that's similar to Blender. That's free and open source. It's called Audacity, and you can find it at audacity.sourceforge.net. You can download it for free, and it's a lot like Adobe Audition, where it's a sound recorder and editing software. You can add special effects and edit sound in different layers and things like that. So I already have it downloaded and installed, so let me just bring it up here. And it's real easy to start a new recording. You just hit the little red record button. Boom, and you can see it does the waveform and records as I'm talking right now. So I was a little worried if this would actually work while I'm recording with the other software, but apparently it does. So to stop recording, all you have to do is hit the little stop button there, and you just put your time cursor here and just boom, and you can see it does the waveform and records as I'm talking right now. So that's real easy to use. So since our guy was Irish, I'm gonna fail with my bad Irish accent and say a little something for him to speak along with. I'm just making this off the top of my head, so hopefully it won't sound too random. Okay, here we go. Let's see how to get my Irish accent here. St. Patrick's Day coming up. I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after. I don't know. Let's see what that sounds like. St. Patrick's Day coming up. I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after. Yeah, I guess that'll work. So we want to get rid of this stuff at the very beginning. So you ought to just click and drag across it all the way down to the beginning. Click and drag, and then just hit the delete button. And then you can... St. Patrick's Day coming up. I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after. So there we go. Then we go ahead and get rid of that last bit too. Okay, and then you can save as. Actually, you want to export, because if you save it, it's just going to save the project rather than the actual sound file. So we just go export, and there's a few different options. I usually use MP3, but this has to have a special codec installed, and I don't actually have that installed at this point. So I'm just going to use the regular WAV file, and we'll just say Micky St. Patty's. Okay, so go ahead and save that, and then it pops up here if you're actually recording music, or if you're playing an instrument and you're recording it, you can put in your artist name, track title. All that stuff can go right here and be added to the actual file. So that's pretty cool, but I don't have any of that stuff, so I'm just going to say OK, and probably already good to go. So to bring a sound clip into Blender, you have to do it in the video editor. Now you could go to the video sequence editor here, but there's a setup already done for that. Just go to where it says default up here and click video editing, and that'll bring up the video editing area, which I kind of like to rearrange myself, but for right now this will work. All we have to do, or all we're wanting to do, is just add a sound. So just go down here to add sound, and there's our Micky St. Patty's. So we'll go ahead and add that sound strip in. And where did it put it? There, way over there. Okay, so just grab that, right click, and drag it all the way to the very first number on the line says 1. Or, wherever you want to put it in your timeline. So just click. There we go. Okay, so now I want to see that waveform, because it's very handy for knowing when he's going to be saying different words, and so therefore when is the best time to put these keyframes. So you just come down here, scroll over here on the properties, and say draw waveform, and you can see it draws it in there. And then you can click and drag this guy here, and you can see that a little bit bigger. Okay, now in order to hear it, you go playback, audio, scrubbing, and then I like to use Vsync. So if you hit rewind.
St. Patrick's Day coming up, I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, and I'll top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness.
So he stops talking at here, which is, we'll round it out and say 180, frame 180, so we can trim that 250 down to 180. So now our timeline goes from frame 1 to frame 180. Okay, so now we got that inserted in there. We can go back to the default view. There we go. And now I want to, in this window here, actually, let's create a third window here and change this one to the video sequence editor so we can actually see that waveform in here as we're working. Okay, so make this window a little smaller so we can see all our keyframes here. And now we're in the action editor. I'm going to say new action, and we're going to call this one Micky, why not St. Patty's? Okay, so we're ready to start playing with all these different phonemes. This is the fun part. It'll work a little faster if we turn off those particle hairs, and also if we turn off subsurf. It'll be able to play the animation a lot smoother because it won't have to worry about all the extra polygons and vertices and all that fun stuff. Okay, so we'll grab one of these bones here, go to our bone settings there, our object data for our rig, and let's go ahead and select all the mouth controllers and rewind all the way. Go ahead and turn on our automatic keyframe insertion, make sure those two keys are selected there. We'll zoom in here, and so right now he's not saying anything, so I'm going to go ahead and give him one of these generic expressions. We'll just hit the little magnifying glass there. You see it automatically inserts keyframes. And we'll come up here, and you can see he starts to talk right about there. So around about frame 8. So I'm going to put the other generic one, phoneme right there. So we got a little bit of a movement. So Saint, we'll go ahead and use that generic like I was talking about. And then Saint with A. Now these aren't always going to be the best choices because he's saying Saint, not Saint. So it may not look right. So we'll just zoom in here. Saint, then Patty's. We're going to use that BP. So he's closing his lips there. Pa. Go ahead and use that A again. And then St. Patrick's Day. We'll use the for the T. St. Patrick's. Go ahead and use the E this time. And then we'll go ahead and use the for the D part. Day. Use the A. And then for the coming up part. We'll go ahead and use the oo for the that won't work. So we'll just go ahead and use again. I guess we'll have to use one of the generic ones for the k part. So go ahead and pop back to that keyframe. You see that orange line across there. That means there's no difference between these two keyframes. Those are duplicates. So that's what I was talking about with having these extra generics for just such occasions. So let's use that generic 2. Then coming up, we need to do the M's. Then there. What is it he says? Let's see what this looks like so far. This first 36 frames.
St. Patrick's Day coming up. I
like. We'll go ahead and use and then just go ahead and like I said, you can kind of just fudge this. Some of these shape keys will look better during certain sounds that he's saying than others. Like, did we use that one? I believe so. Like, okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead and throw in the between the two A shapes. And then the generic 2 for the K. Actually, let's use generic 1 on that one. Like to have. And then the F. We didn't create a sheet. Yeah, we did. There we go. F also works for V because there's the same basic lip shape. So F and V. Let me go and rename that. F, V. Okay. So I'd like to have actually there we go. Then we don't want his lips to be frozen this whole time, so go ahead and use one of these. Actually, let's use generic 2. Then when it gets to a corn, we can use generic 1. Corn. We'll go ahead and use the oo. Corn. I want to say beef. There we go. Beef. And then the F. And A. Cabbage. Oops, I think I scrolled too far. There we go. Cabbage. And then I think he's saying, you know. Yeah. So was it we're already using Let's scroll over here. Yeah. So let's use generic 1. And then no. So O. And then top. Aw. Let's be that. We'll use the A. And then P. Off. So we'll say off. And then he's saying with, so that'll be a oo shape to begin with. With. Nice. We'll just use a generic, maybe generic 2 this time. Nice. Tall. Tall. Glass. Go ahead and use that one. Guinness. And then almost done. Let's see what it looks like so far.
St. Patrick's Day coming up. I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, you know, top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of Guinness.
Yeah, okay, so we'll go ahead and here, scroll this up here. Using my middle mouse wheel, by the way, to click and drag that. Oops, I grabbed the wrong thing there, didn't I? Okay, so just in the area here, just click and drag with the middle mouse wheel. Maybe a slice of pie. So we'll use the M, click that. May be slice eyes pie pie F or we'll say on that one, and then go back to a generic, maybe generic 1. And then I like to go ahead and add at the very end, go ahead and put in another shape, maybe not quite that extreme. Let's just use the one there. Okay, so now it's a little easier to see his lips in motion if we actually turn off the layer that has the bones on there. So we'll just go ahead and hit the hold down shift and click on that layer there. It'll turn it off, and we can go ahead and rewind and see what he looks like.
St. Patrick's Day coming up. I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, you know, top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after.
Yeah, it looks okay. I don't think the Guinness part is. Let's get in here. So glass. Let's move some of these keyframes around, Micky. A little better timing. Is that the A shape? believe so. Let's go and turn the bone layer back on. Okay. So I say Guinness. Timing's a little off. Go ahead and use the A on there. Guinness. Maybe space that out a little bit. Okay.
St. Patrick's Day coming up. I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, you know, top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after.
Okay, that's not too bad. If you want to, you don't have to use the phonemes the whole time. For example, Guinness, I'd like him on the Guinness. I'd like him to open his mouth a little bit bigger, so I'm going to go ahead and grab that mouth wide, go ahead and drag that down a little more, and just make sure I'm still on that keyframe, and all the other ones will still be fine. Go ahead and maybe make it there. Yeah.
St. Patrick's Day coming up. I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, you know, top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after.
Okay, so that's not too bad. We got his mouth saying we want it, what we want it to. Let's go ahead and animate his eyes to kind of look around and his head to kind of follow along. So let's go ahead and animate a blink. So I'm just going to go all the way to the beginning of our timeline and just grab all the eyelids and just go ahead and hit the I button to insert a keyframe. And I'm going to say, I usually just go rot scale, which is location, rotation, and scale. We only really need location at this point, but that just kind of covers all bases. So I'll just use that one. So we'll say that's where they're open. So we'll go up a few frames, 2, 3, 4, and go ahead and close them all the way. There we go. Okay, now we can select them again. Another, okay, since we have the automatic keyframe turned on, automatic keyframe insertion turned on, it automatically added the keyframes. So now to open them back, we can just grab this top keyframe right there, which selects all of those underneath it. It's the dope sheet summary. So we just selected these individually. It'd be individual like so, but if you just select that top one, the very top, it selects all of them. So we just hit Shift D and drag that over about like so, and it'll go blink and open back. So now we can just select these and then kind of just randomly put them across here, just duplicate them across all the way through. So, or you can kind of put it on certain words like he's corned beef and cabbage, you know. Maybe move these here a little further this way because he's pausing, kind of trying to think. Maybe even make them a little bit bigger. Scale them apart a little bit bigger. So I'm just hitting the S button to scale them, just like we do. So we'll just go ahead and put... And then maybe one more blink. And one final at the very end. Okay, so we got his blinking down. Let's go ahead and use, animate his eyebrows to kind of... illustrate his, what he's saying. So, St. Patrick's Day, he's kind of thinking. So his brows are going to be kind of down a little bit. Maybe this middle one down a little further. Okay. Go ahead and select. Which one was it? That? Okay. They're kind of overlapping each other there. Can't see which is which. So I moved them down. So I want to go back to the very beginning and move them up a little bit just so they actually have some movement there. St. Patrick's Day coming up, and then he's kind of like to have a and he pauses here to think a little bit, so move him down some, and then he raises them up. Corned beef and cabbage, and maybe down. Nice tall glass of Guinness, and then maybe a slice of pie after. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Let's turn off the layer with the bone so we can get the full face effect. Go ahead and rewind that.
St. Patrick's Day coming up. I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after. St. Patrick's Day coming up. I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, and I'll top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after.
Okay, so that's not bad. Now to really make it look a lot more lifelike, we want to have his head actually, you know, shaking and nodding and things like that. So we don't only want the face to move, we want the whole body, the whole, you know, he's animated. So he needs to be moving. So we'll go in our layer, or our rig layers over here. Just go back to that first one where it's just the head and everything. So now, maybe he's kind of looking up a little bit, and then he starts talking. St. Patrick's Day coming up. I like to have... Now, when you're moving here, you don't want it to look too floaty. And what that means is like... he looks down, he's in constant movement. You want it to be in constant movement, but not so fluid. You want him to go from one pose to the next pose to the next pose. You don't want him to go pose, 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 if that makes sense. So what I like to do is, like, we start off looking up, and then we'll look down, and then I'm going to duplicate that keyframe right there where he's looking down, duplicate that up a little bit, and then maybe rotate it just ever so slightly so it's not perfectly stock still. And then we'll move this one up a little bit, maybe have that come. So he's kind of blinks and looks up a little bit. Then corned beef and cabbage. We'll just rotate like that. Kind of come back down. Duplicate these over a little bit. Rotate ever so slightly, just a little bit to give a little bit of motion. And then a nice tall glass of Guinness. And then he's going to have that one ever so slightly. And then maybe a slice of pie. Ever so slightly there. Okay, so now
St. Patrick's Day coming up, I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, and I'll top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after.
So that looks okay. One other trick you can do. Let me show you real quick. I'm going to save this. Just to show you something that you can do that makes it even more lifelike. I'm going to go ahead and hit the F button here on Micky St. Patty's to save that set of poses for all the work we've done with the talking and everything. I'm going to go and X that out. I'm going to create a new one and just call this one Head Motion Test. Okay, so now the way to do this is you can just control it with your mouse movement. Like if you hit R twice, double tap R, you can just move your mouse around like so. And if the timeline is playing, it'll add, and the automatic keyframe is turned on, it'll automatically capture that motion. So what you want to do is go ahead and set your time slider up to really close to the end, and then you'll play it, and then right, since it's already turned on, so you want the slider right to the end, you hit play, and then right as it goes back to the beginning, it loops back to the start, you come in here, you hit R, double tap R, and start moving your mouse accordingly. So it's a little tricky to get used to at first, but let's give it a shot. So we'll hit play, and then come up here, double tap R, and move the mouse as he's talking. So here we go.
Maybe a slice of pie after. St. Patrick's Day coming up, I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, and I'll top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after.
Okay, so we had that keyframe when I hit R earlier that it started trying to go back to, so it looked kind of stuttery, like right there. So I'm just going to select all of them, and we'll do it again. So right towards the end, go ahead and hit play, double tap R.
St. Patrick's Day coming up, I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, and I'll top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after.
And I did it again, didn't I? Okay, so when I hit R and start moving my mouse at all, it automatically puts a keyframe in there. So make sure it's actually looping back to the beginning before you actually start moving your mouse at all. So almost at the end. One more time.
Slice of pie after. St. Patrick's Day coming up, I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, and I'll top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after.
Okay, so there we go.
Up, I like to have
see, I'm not moving my mouse there at all.
Cabbage, and I'll top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness.
It looks a little stiff in places, but you can fix that. There used to be a plugin. Let me see if it's still in here. What was it? Smooth. Nope, I guess it's not. Did I spell it right? Yeah, smooth. Okay, it was a way to smooth the curves. Maybe it's under curve. Let's see, user preferences. Curves. Simplify curves. Actually, yes, there it is. So you turn on simplify curves. And if you go to the graph editor, you'll still have all of these keyframes in here. They're just now represented by curves instead of actual keyframe points. So it looks like a flat line now, but that's basically because it's going from 0 to 1, 1 being 100%. So if we want to actually see the curves and valleys and everything, let's go to View, View All, and then you can see the difference there. And if we select all those and hit the space bar, we can go Simplify F Curves. Boom. And then you can hit this, and you can see it starts simplifying all those keyframes in there and makes it a lot smoother. So now if I hit play,
St. Patrick's Day
see, it's a lot smoother.
Like to have the corned beef and cabbage, top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after.
But then you get that floaty look like I was talking about before. That's why I kind of like to do it manually. But anyways, we'll go back to the dope sheet and action editor. Go ahead and kill that one out and put the Mickey St. Patty's back in there. Okay, so we are just about done with this. Let's go ahead and rewind all the way. Give it a watch one more time. Turn off the, turn off the thingy, the thingy there, the layer. Turn that off, and let's see one more last time.
St. Patrick's Day coming up. I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after.
Okay, not bad. One more thing I want to do, just to add a little bit more realism, is have his eyes move. Right now they're focused on that one point, and it really looks a lot better if he's kind of glancing around the room. You know, it helps him so he's not creepy and just staring at that one spot. So we'll just move our slider out here so he's looking at the camera, or maybe just to the side of the camera. He's kind of doing an interview or something, or maybe to this side of the camera, maybe up, I don't know, somewhere. Anyways, so we'll do the same thing we did with the head. We'll go up a few frames. So he's saying St. Patrick's Day coming up, and then I'll kind of glance to the side because he's thinking, so I'm going to move that down here. Now we don't want it to slowly drift there because eyes dart back and forth. You don't get a lot of slow movement with eyes unless they're watching something that's moving. If they're just glancing around, it's quick movement. So we want to duplicate that first location and drag that really close to that next one. Not, you know, give it a little bit of travel time, like so. And it really helps if you do that during a blink. That really makes it look more believable. So he glances over there without a blink, but he can look back during the blink. So right there's the blink. So we'll go ahead and have him move back to that original spot. We'll just duplicate that frame there. So he's looking away and then he's coming back.
I like to have the corned beef and cabbage.
And then when he says, you know, I want to have him go ahead and look away again. So this time we'll look over to this side. And maybe it's just a quick glance over there and a quick glance back. So we'll duplicate that one a little bit and then duplicate that first one again. Okay, so we'll go and duplicate this up here. And then after he says in Guinness, and he's going to kind of glance away. So we'll go ahead and glance over this way again. Drag that just a little bit. And then final. Okay, so now go ahead and save this again. Go ahead and turn off the bone layer, look through our camera, and let's see what he's going to look like. Let's make this window a little bigger. Okay, so now we'll see the final pre-rendered animation, see what it looks like.
St. Patrick's Day coming up. I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after. St. Patrick's Day coming up.
Okay, so he's looking down, glances down, back,
cabbage, top it off with
looks
a nice
over,
tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after.
Okay, so let's look one more time. Okay, that look there is a little too quick for me, so I'm going to spread it out a little bit. And just grab these keyframes and just move them apart. Let's have him use that blink to look back. There we go.
St. Patrick's Day coming up. I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after.
Okay, so not bad, not bad. Okay, so this is the final part for this chapter 1 of Micky's head. In the chapter 2, we'll get in and we'll actually start working on his shirt and maybe his arms and legs and all that. I'm not sure if we'll do the rest of the complete body. We might. I don't know yet. Haven't decided. I don't have a lesson plan. I'm just kind of winging it as I go. So anyways, not sure when I'll get chapter 2 started. I think I'll take a break for a little while. This has been 21 days in a row getting these. Well, I missed one day, I think. But in any case, take a little break before chapter 2. But in any case, I'll get this rendered out, and I'll tag it on the end of this video, and you can see the final rendered thing with all his hair and his facial, everything we worked on. So you can see the final version. So, one more thing. I realize that you guys might not know how to render out a video once you get your animation all done. You want to render it out. It's really easy. You just go to the camera tab here, and set your resolution the way you want. 1280 by 720 is what I'm using. Right now it's at 75%. That makes it about 956 by something. 624. I don't even remember. But anyways, for my final render, I'll go ahead and drag that up to 100%. But frame rate, we're using 24 frames per second. That's fine. Also, one thing I did in between part 19 and 20 was when I render, I turned on full sample and dropped the samples down to 5. And what that does is if we look at that render, a lot of times when you render particles, it doesn't do well along edges, like the edge of his head. I didn't really notice a big problem here, but it's a good idea to go ahead and use that when you're using particle hair, particle fur, or whatever. Because what it does, it renders it out aliased. Anti-aliased means it kind of smoothed pixels, but it renders it out aliased, and then it anti-aliases them after 5 passes, so it smooths it out. So that's good to use with particles. And then your output, usually if I'm doing, well, I like to render out a series of JPEGs. So I select JPEG, run the quality all the way up to 100%, and then choose the folder I want to put it in. So right now we're Blender in the Micky folder. Create a new directory and call this one Lip-Sync, if I can spell it correctly, Lip-Sync. I like to put numbers after them just in case I want to make a second one. 01. That way I don't have to name it Lip-Sync 2, whatever. Well, it would be 2, but then you'll have 1, so it'll, anyways. And then name it, I usually use the same thing, Lip-Sync 01, and then put an underscore, because doing a series of images, it'll name it this, and then it'll name it like frame 01, it'll be 0001, 0002, 0003, so on and so forth. So this is a good way. I like to put the underscore in there to separate out the name of the file versus the frame that it's on. So I'm going to accept that. And as it renders it, like I said, the first one will be lip-sync 01 underscore 0001, because it adds like 1,000 places. And it'll be .jpeg, lip-sync 01 00002.jpg, so on and so forth. And then I'll render that all out. And then once that's all rendered, then I'll bring it back in the video editor. So we'll go back in here, video editing, and since we already have the audio there, we just have to add in an image, and then we would add in all of these images here as an image strip. Say add image strip, and then I'll add it in there. And then once you get that all set up, you go over here and you want to change your output. Instead of a JPEG, I usually use usually H.264 usually works okay. And then encoding, I'll use H.264 again probably, or sometimes I'll use MPEG-4. You just use whatever setting. You can try a few different ones, see which one works the best for you, and get all the settings set up. If if you have audio in there, you definitely want to turn on, I usually use MP3, and then you would just go up and say animation and click on that, and it will render your video out to whatever you named it here. I think H.264 does it might be .dvd, or I'm not exactly sure the extension that it puts on it, but in any case, that's how you render out. So now, a couple seconds, you'll see the final lip sync video from Micky. All right, thanks for watching again, this whole chapter 1, and we'll see you eventually in chapter 2. Thanks.
St. Patrick's Day coming up, I like to have the corned beef and cabbage, top it off with a nice tall glass of Guinness. Maybe a slice of pie after.